In the world of coin collecting, sometimes the most unassuming pieces turn out to be treasures worth thousands. Take a moment to consider the humble top 4 Australian 20-cent coins. The first up 20-cent 1975, it's a coin so ordinary, so easily overlooked, that most Australians probably passed it through their hands without a second thought. Yet in the quiet corners of numismatic circles and rare coin auctions, this seemingly standard piece of change has become the center of attention and, for some lucky collectors, a source of staggering value. Let's rewind for a second and set the stage. It's the mid-1970s in Australia. The country is in a time of significant cultural and political change. Gough Whitlam is Prime Minister, color television is becoming mainstream, and the nation is transitioning into a new era of identity and independence. Amidst all this transformation, the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra is quietly producing everyday coinage, including the 20-cent piece, a denomination introduced only a decade earlier when Australia made the switch from pounds, shillings, and pence to the decimal system in 1966. Now, fast forward to today, and we find that not all 1975 20-cent coins were created equal. In fact, a few of them, only a handful known to exist, have become some of the most coveted coins in Australian numismatic history. The most expensive among them can fetch over 5,000 Australian dollars, and in some cases, even more, depending on condition, provenance, and uniqueness. So what makes these coins so special? Why would anyone pay thousands of dollars for a 20-cent coin they could have once found in their pocket? Well, it comes down to rarity, but not just any kind of rarity. We're talking about a very specific, very elusive mule error. A mule coin, for those new to collecting, is a coin struck with mismatched dies, that is, one side of the coin was never meant to be paired with the other. These types of errors are extremely rare because minting processes are carefully monitored and controlled. But every now and then, a mistake slips through, and when it does, collectors go absolutely wild. The most famous example, a 1975 20-cent mule, is believed to have been struck with an obverse die, that's the head side from a 1976 10-cent coin, which was accidentally paired with the reverse die, the tail side of a 1975 20-cent coin. This mismatched pairing led to an ever-so-slight difference in the coin's size, rim, and most notably, the alignment of features. At a glance, it may look like any other 20-cent piece, but under close examination, especially with a trained eye or a magnifying loupe, the discrepancies become noticeable. The result is a coin that is unique not just in its date, but in its very construction and accidental creation, never intended for circulation, and yet somehow released into the wild. Only a very small number of these mule errors are believed to exist. In fact, less than 10 have ever been publicly verified. That level of rarity makes them more than just collector's items. They become historical artifacts, anomalies that tell a story about human error in an otherwise mechanical process. And when you factor in condition, well, that's where things get even more interesting. A high-grade 1975 mule coin, especially one graded MS65 or higher, meaning it's a near mint, uncirculated condition, can command a premium price at auction. In 2020, one such coin was reportedly sold for over $5,500, stunning the coin collecting world and renewing interest in what was once considered a mundane piece of currency. But the intrigue doesn't stop there. Rumors have circulated in the numismatic community about other potential varieties and subtle minting errors in the 1975 20-cent series. Some collectors have reported seeing slight variations in lettering, differences in the spacing of the word Australia, and inconsistencies in the Queen's portrait. While many of these are likely the result of normal wear or die fatigue, that's when minting tools become worn out over time, a few of these variations have led some to speculate that there may be more hidden gems waiting to be discovered. What makes the story of the 1975 20-cent coin so compelling is that it challenges our assumptions about value. Most people think value comes from gold, silver, or some rare metallic composition. But with this coin, value comes from mistake, from imperfection. It's a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are those that deviate from the norm, those that stand out, because they were never meant to exist in the first place. Of course, as interest in rare coins grows, so too does the risk of counterfeit and fraud. That's why reputable coin grading services like PeaceGS and NGC play a crucial role. They authenticate, grade, and encapsulate rare coins, giving buyers confidence and ensuring that when a rare 1975 20-cent mule comes to market, it's the real deal. It's also worth noting that not every old coin is valuable. Age alone doesn't determine worth. Condition, rarity, demand, and historical significance, these are the pillars of coin valuation. So while you might find a 1975 20-cent coin in your drawer, the chances of it being a valuable mule are very slim. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? The possibility, however small, that you might be holding a $1,000 coin in your hand. In recent years, social media and YouTube have breathed new life into the hobby. Collectors of all ages are now sharing their finds, educating each other, and trading coins online. Videos like this one are part of a growing community that celebrates not just the monetary value of coins, but the stories they tell. And the 1975 20-cent coin has a story worth telling, a story of rarity, of human error, of discovery. Well, maybe it's to look a little closer at the things we take for granted, to pause and wonder about the history of the everyday objects around us, and to never underestimate the value of paying attention. Because the next time you're handed a 20-cent coin, it might just be a piece of history. The next up, the 1978 Australian 20-cent coin. Now, you might be thinking, how could a simple 20-cent piece from the late 70s be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? Well, as we're about to find out, there's a lot more to this coin than meets the eye. So, buckle up and grab your magnifying glass. We're about to uncover the mystery of one of the most expensive 20-cent coins ever produced in Australia. Let's start with a bit of background. The Australian 20-cent coin was first introduced in 1966, alongside the decimal currency changeover. Designed by Stuart Devlin, the reverse features a platypus in motion, an iconic symbol of Australia's unique wildlife. Over the years, this coin has remained largely unchanged in design, which makes subtle variations and rare errors all the more valuable to collectors. The year 1978 was a fairly ordinary one in terms of production numbers. Over 58 million 20-cent coins were minted at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra. So on the surface, nothing seems particularly rare or collectible about this issue. But as any experienced numismatist will tell you, it's not just about how many were made. It's about the small details that slip through the cracks. And that's exactly what makes the 1978 20-cent coin so intriguing. While the bulk of the coins are considered common, there are extremely rare versions and error coins from that year that fetch incredible prices at auctions. We're going to explore what these errors are, how they happened, and why collectors are willing to pay big money for them. Let's talk about coin errors. These are mistakes that occur during the minting process, and they can significantly increase a coin's value. In the case of the 1978 20-cent coin, the most expensive variants are usually those with distinct minting errors, such as off-center strikes, double strikes, die cracks, or perhaps most famously, coins that were mistakenly struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet is the blank metal disc that is stamped into a coin. If a coin is struck on a foreign or incorrect planchet, say, one meant for a different denomination or country, it instantly becomes a rare and desirable collector's item. One of the most talked about examples is a 1978 20-cent coin struck on a 10-cent planchet. This results in a smaller, lighter coin with visible design compression and weak edging. It's a striking and obvious error, and when authenticated and graded, such a coin can sell for several $1,000s depending on its condition. Imagine paying 20 cents for a coin in the 70s, only to discover today that it could be worth more than a luxury vacation or even a used car now. Let's touch on the role of coin grading. Grading is the process of evaluating a coin's condition and assigning it a rank based on its quality and preservation. A high-grade 1978 20-cent error coin, especially if it's in mint state or uncirculated condition, can be dramatically more valuable than one that's worn or damaged. Professional grading services like PeaceGS or NGC are often used to verify authenticity and assign a numerical grade. When a rare coin gets a high grade, it's like getting a certificate of rarity and quality, which can send its market value soaring, but it's not just error coins that hold value. There are also rumors and stories among collectors of extremely low mintage proofs or test strikes from 1978. These are coins that may never have been officially released to the public, but found their way into circulation through staff or internal releases. While documentation is limited, these whispers are enough to keep collectors hunting for that elusive treasure. Proof coins, especially those from mint sets, are also highly prized, particularly if they display cameo contrast and remain in pristine condition. Auction records tell us a lot about how much collectors are willing to pay. In recent years, there have been a few recorded sales of 1978 20-cent error coins reaching prices in the thousands. For example, in 2021, an extremely rare double-struck coin sold for over $3,000. Another off-metal error piece, confirmed to be struck on a Malaysian 50-cent planchet, fetched even more. These examples are part of what makes numismatics so exciting. You never know what might be lurking in your pocket change, of course. Rarity isn't everything. Demand also plays a huge role in a coin's value. Australian coin collectors are a passionate group, and demand for unique or historical coins is strong. Coins with a story, especially those connected to printing or minting errors, tend to attract the most interest. And when demand meets scarcity, that's when prices can explode. Add in a bit of mystery or uncertainty, like the possibility of undiscovered varieties, and the 1978 20-cent coin becomes even more captivating. It's also worth noting that the Australian coin market has been growing steadily in recent years. Online marketplaces, dedicated auction houses, and even social media communities have made it easier than ever for collectors to find, buy, and sell rare coins. This exposure has brought increased attention to older decimal issues, including the 1978 20-cent. With more eyes scanning through change jars and family collections, the chance of finding one of these rare errors is higher than ever. So, how can you tell if you have a valuable 1978 20-cent coin? First, examine the coin closely. Look for anything unusual, off-center designs, unusually light or heavy weight, doubling of the image or letters, or unusual coloring or texture. If something seems off, that's a good sign. We recommend using a magnifying glass and checking your coin against high-resolution images from reliable numismatic sources. If your coin appears to be in error, your next step is to have it authenticated and graded by a professional for those serious about the hobby. Joining a local numismatic society or online collector group can provide valuable insight and support. These communities are often the first to spot trends in the market and are a great resource for identifying fakes, sharing discoveries, and learning about coin history. And let's not forget, every legendary coin started somewhere. Many were found by ordinary people simply paying attention. As we wind down today's deep dive, it's clear that the 1978 Australian 20-cent coin is far from ordinary. While millions were produced, a few rare and unusual examples have turned this common coin into a collector's dream. Whether through striking errors, planchet anomalies, or mysterious low mintage versions, the 1978 issue continues to intrigue and inspire treasure hunters across Australia and beyond. If you've got a collection at home, or maybe a jar of old change tucked away somewhere, now might be the perfect time to take a closer look. Who knows? You could be sitting on one of the most valuable 20-cent coins ever made. And even if you don't find a $1,000 error, you might just discover a new passion for coin collecting. The next up, the 1980 Australian 20-cent coin. On the surface, it's just another piece of spare change, but some rare versions of this very coin have fetched staggering amounts among collectors, reaching hundreds and even thousands of dollars. Why? What makes a simple 20-cent piece from 1980 so valuable? Stay tuned as we unpack the secrets, stories, and stunning valuations of this unassuming but rare numismatic gem. Before we get into the specifics of the 1980 coin, it's important to understand a little bit about Australian currency history. Australia moved to decimal currency on the 14th of February, 1966, replacing the pounds, shillings, and pence system. With this shift came new coins, including the 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50-cent pieces. The 20-cent coin, designed by Stuart Devlin, featured a beautiful image of a platypus in swirling water, an instantly recognizable and iconic image in Australian numismatics. Over the years, the 20-cent coin has remained largely unchanged in design, but slight variations in minting, dyes, and errors have turned some of them into treasures. In 1980, over 63 million 20-cent coins were minted in Australia. That's a huge number, and normally, this would suggest that any single coin from that year wouldn't be particularly valuable. They were struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, and under normal circumstances, circulated coins from such a high mintage year wouldn't attract collector interest. However, what makes the 1980 20-cent coin special isn't just its date, but the existence of rare minting errors and variations that occurred during production. Now here's where it gets interesting. Among the millions of coins minted in 1980, a very small number have been found with anomalies. These are called minting errors. In the world of coin collecting, mint errors are highly sought after because they're usually one of a kind, or at the very least, extremely rare. Some 1980 20-cent coins have been discovered with misstrikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes, or even die clashes. These are technical terms, but they all point to one thing: mistakes that occurred during the minting process, leading to uniquely flawed coins. Collectors prize these because they're unusual, and the rarer the error, the more valuable the coin. One specific error variant that has captured collector attention is known as the double bar error. Although more famously associated with the 1966 20-cent coin, some numismatists have discovered similar bar patterns on 1980 coins. These bars appear behind the head of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, typically caused by damage or wear on the die used to stamp a coin. While subtle, this pattern can command attention and, depending on the clarity and condition, can increase the coin's value significantly. In high-grade condition, such a coin might fetch a few $100s or more at auction. Another class of valuable coins is what's known as proof coins. These are specially made for collectors, with higher quality strikes and finishes. In 1980, the Royal Australian Mint did issue proof sets that included a 20-cent coin. These coins were never intended for circulation and were often sold in cases. They're not errors, but because of their rarity and pristine condition, they can be significantly more valuable than their circulated counterparts. If you have a 1980 20-cent coin that looks unusually shiny, mirror-like, or untouched, you might want to take a closer look. It could be a proof coin. While not as rare as mint errors, they still hold value, especially if still sealed in their original packaging. Let's talk about grading, because in the world of coins, condition is king. A 1980 20-cent coin with an error might be worth $5 in poor condition, but jump to $500 or more if it's in pristine, uncirculated condition. Coin collectors use a scale from poor to mint state, and coins are often professionally graded by institutions like PCGS or NGC. A coin with an MS, mint state, rating, especially MS65 or above, is considered top tier. This means no visible signs of wear, clean surfaces, and strong detail. So even if you have a rare error coin, its value depends heavily on how well it's been preserved over the years. Proper storage away from moisture, air, and handling can make or break its long-term value. So now, we come to the million-dollar, or rather, few thousand-dollar question. Why is the 1980 20-cent coin valuable? The short answer: rarity and collector demand. While millions were minted, very few of those coins have survived in perfect condition or with notable mint errors. Combine that with the growing interest in Australian coin collecting, and you get rising prices. Some collectors are willing to pay top dollar to complete their sets or own unique variants. Auctions have seen these coins sell for hundreds or even thousands, especially when certified as rare errors or mint condition specimens. Let's look at a few real-world examples. In recent years, Australian auction houses and online marketplaces have seen 1980 20-cent coins sell for impressive amounts. A particularly well-preserved proof coin might sell for between $50 and $200, depending on demand. But some rare error coins, such as those with dramatic off-center strikes or double strikes, have fetched over $1,000 in private sales and online bidding wars. The key here is authentication. If a coin is certified by a reputable grader and listed with a known error, It dramatically increases its value and legitimacy in the collector's market. At this point, you're probably itching to check your change jar or old coin collection. So, how can you tell if you've got one of these rare 1980 20-cent coins? First, check the obverse side. That's the side with the queen's head. Look for anything unusual, like double bars, diamond cracks, or odd surface patterns. Then examine the reverse the platypus side for signs of misalignment or extra metal. Use a magnifying glass if needed. Finally, check the coin's edges for any unusual shapes or thickness. If you find anything that looks off, don't clean the coin. That can actually reduce its value. Instead, consult a coin dealer or send it for professional grading if you do think you found a rare coin. There are several paths you can take. You can approach a reputable coin dealer for an informal valuation, or you can submit it to a grading service like PCGS, NGC, or even the Perth Mint. Once you have a certificate of authenticity and a grading report, you can list the coin on auction sites like eBay, Downey's, or even through specialized numismatic auction houses. Be patient and be cautious of scammers if a deal looks too good to be true. It probably is. Coin collecting can be a rewarding hobby, both financially and intellectually. The 1980 20-cent coin is a prime example of how everyday objects can hold hidden value, especially when history, rarity, and human error collide. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or a curious beginner, keeping an eye on your spare change could lead to a surprising discovery. So next time you're sorting coins, give that 1980 20-cent piece a second glance. It might just be a small fortune in disguise. The next up, the 1981 Australian 20-cent piece. To the casual observer, it might look like pocket change, but to numismatists and collectors, one particular variety of this coin has become incredibly valuable. In fact, one of these rare 20-cent coins has fetched thousands of dollars at auction. That's right, a 20-cent coin potentially worth more than your car. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and let's explore the most expensive 1981 Australian 20-cent coin and why it's become one of the most talked about modern Australian coins on the market. To understand why this coin is so valuable, we need to go back to 1981, a unique year in the history of Australian minting. At the time, the Royal Australian Mint was under immense pressure to produce high volumes of circulating coins due to demand. To meet these needs, they outsourced some of the minting. In total, 20-cent coins were struck at 3 different locations that year: the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, the Royal Mint in London, and the Royal Canadian Mint in Winnipeg. While most Australians are familiar with the coins produced domestically, what many don't realize is that some of the most fascinating varieties of the 1981 20-cent coin came from overseas, and one in particular from Canada has become the holy grail for collectors. Let's break that down a bit. The coins minted in Canberra are your standard 1981 20-cent coins, common and widely circulated. The London minted coins also look similar at first glance, but they carry slight differences in the design, particularly in the spacing of the lettering and the strength of the rim. But the real star of the show is the Canadian variety. You see, when the Royal Canadian Mint struck these coins, a small number of them ended up being slightly different due to the dies used. These variations have come to be known as the Canadian Mule 20-cent coins, and they are extremely rare. What makes them so unique and valuable is a minting error, a mix-up in the dies used to strike the coin. So what exactly is a mule error? In coin terminology, a mule occurs when a coin is struck using mismatched dies, usually a reverse die from one coin and an obverse die from another. In the case of a 1981 20-cent coin, some coins minted in Canada were struck using the obverse, head side, of a Canadian 20-cent die instead of the Australian one. That means Queen Elizabeth II's portrait on the coin is ever so slightly different from the one used by the Royal Australian Mint. The portrait on the mule coin is noticeably smaller in size, and the spacing of the lettering around the Queen's head is tighter. To the untrained eye, it's barely noticeable, but to collectors, it's a major deal. This error is what makes the 1981 Canadian Mule 20-cent coin so incredibly valuable. It's not just a variation, it's a mistake that slipped through the cracks and made it into circulation now. How do you know if you've got one of these valuable coins in your collection? It all comes down to details. First, look closely at the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. On the mule coin, the portrait appears smaller, almost squeezed toward the center. The spacing between the rim and the lettering, particularly around the words Elizabeth II and Australia 1981, is tighter than on a standard coin. The most telltale sign is the larger gap between the rim and the Queen's head on the Australian version, whereas on the mule, everything looks slightly more compressed. Some collectors also note that the font style and strike quality may feel subtly different due to the Canadian dies. And here's the thing, some of these coins actually went into circulation, meaning it's entirely possible someone out there could have one sitting unnoticed in a jar of spare change. It's like a modern treasure hunt. So how much are we talking about in terms of value? Well, in recent years, authenticated 1981 Canadian Mule 20-cent coins have fetched prices upwards of $3,000 to $5,000 at auction, with some examples in pristine, uncirculated condition selling for even more. And as awareness of this error spreads, demand has grown. The rarity of the mule coin, with only a small number known to exist combined with the intrigue of a minting mistake, has made it one of the most desirable Australian coins from the late 20th century. Prices also depend heavily on the coin's condition. A circulated mule might still bring in hundreds or thousands, but an uncirculated or graded example with minimal work can command premium prices. Auction houses and coin dealers around Australia and internationally keep an eye out for these coins, and serious collectors are always on the hunt. There are several reasons why this coin captures the imagination of collectors. First, there's the allure of the error. A mule mistake isn't just a variation. It's an actual minting mix-up that wasn't supposed to happen. Second, there's the international element. A Canadian mint producing Australian coins that end up being misstruck and sent halfway around the world. It's a fascinating story in itself. Then there's the thrill of the chase. Since many of these coins went into circulation, there's always the hope that you might stumble upon one. It's not like some rare gold coin that was locked in a safe. These were everyday coins that people used, spent, and saved. That makes them feel more accessible, like anyone could get lucky. Finally, there's the fact that this is a relatively modern coin. Unlike most high-value coins that are over 100 years old, this one was minted in 1981, well within living memory, making it an exciting find for younger collectors as well. So there you have the incredible story of the 1981 20-cent Australian mule coin, a simple piece of silver-tone metal that's become one of the most sought-after coins in recent history. Whether you're a serious numismatist, a casual collector, or someone who just enjoys uncovering a good story, this coin represents everything we love about the hobby: history, mystery, rarity, and value. So next time you're sorting through your loose change or digging into an old coin jar, take a moment to inspect any 1981 20-cent coins you find. You never know, you just might be holding a small fortune in your hands. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more coin stories, and drop a comment below, especially if you've ever come across one of these rare beauties. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy collecting.